We were just talking Last Dance, and why not bring along a dance partner for the ride, Sydney?
Yeah, someone who's won titles with MJ, so I think he would know a thing or two. BJ Armstrong joining us here on Tim and Sid, currently a player agent. BJ, it's great to talk to you. Welcome to Tim and Sid up here in Toronto. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and hope everyone is well and safe in Toronto.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Timmy.
We're doing okay, and we're all kind of in a similar boat. We were just talking about The Last Dance, and I gotta ask you: had you seen the documentary before it hit the air yesterday, or was that your first viewing of it as well?
That was my first viewing of it as well, and many of the stories I had heard or was there to witness them myself. So it's a little different watching something that you're a part of. And as we get further into it, but most of the stories I had heard or can recount them firsthand, and but this is my first time actually, watching it, just like everyone else here on television.
BJ, was there an angle last night that you thought was a little misrepresented in any way?
Well, it's hard to cover everything, right? But I think overall, what they were trying to do is, I thought in the first two episodes was like kind of introduce all of the characters, right? And, I thought it was interesting of the following. Here we are 30 years later, and people still don't know about that team and what happened in that locker room. And I was just sharing with someone, a very close friend of mine, his son, who's younger, like 25 or so. He was, he was kind of getting his perspective, and I was thinking to myself that, wow, that group is still hold the locker room as a sacred place. Like, no one said anything what happened in the locker room, and I just started laughing because in today's, climate, everything about everyone all the time.
Woj would have had it very quickly. Woj would have had it out there very quickly.
Here we are with arguably one of the most famous people on the planet, and no one has said anything about him, what's happened behind the closed doors. And that's just, to me, that's just a testament of the professionalism of all of the players who played there. They knew that our public space was our public space, and we've all held on to that, 30 years later. And I was thinking, wow, that's kind of unique. And now there's a lot of interest. And you know what? If someone should say something, Michael should be the one to tell it. So we'll see how the next eight episodes will go.
Three-time NBA champion BJ Armstrong joining us here on Tim and Sid. What was it like being in a locker room with Michael Jordan?
Well, one of the things was I think he was, and we certainly were, we were all aware of his, his stardom, right? He was a superstar. He was a star among stars. And, there was this character that we all, became accustomed to, and that was Air Jordan. And we understood it. We understood the business. We understood who and what that was all about. In the locker room, on the planes, when the cameras were off, Michael enjoyed probably more than anything just being one of the guys. He really enjoyed that. And we enjoyed that because, you know what? We could all be silly. We could all, be ourselves. And there was a trust factor of knowing that, we all have a job to do. We're all here to, win games and be professional. But one of the things that I enjoyed more than anything is that our downtime was really fun. We had a lot of fun on those teams. And Michael, he's a guy's guy. He loves being around the guys. We love talking trash. We love playing cards. Back then there was no cell phone, so we actually talked to each other. Imagine that. And we had fun, right, on the bus. And it was good times. And of course everyone loved to play, and we had a common denominator in that way. But overall, if you didn't know, you would just think he was one of the guys because he enjoyed that probably more than anything. And we certainly respected that he made everyone feel comfortable. And but you know what? When it was time to get to business, we certainly did that as well.
BJ, how often would you golf with Michael Jordan?
I didn't golf often with him because of when I was a young player at that time. Certainly, I probably couldn't made it past the first hole. These guys were betting so much, you know, a lot of trash talking out there. And but no, I didn't golf with him often. Those guys would love to play. You know, they would play during the season. Like, you know, I just, you know, I found it hard enough to play in an NBA game, and then these guys would go walk, 18 before shoot around, come back, go to shoot around, then come back after shoot around, play another 18, and then go and play in the game, and he'll have 45, 50 points. Like, he just did things that just didn't make sense to me. And I was like, no one should be that good. Even more, even bigger than that, no one should have the energy to be able to do that, right? He could just go on and on and on and on and perform when necessary. And that was one of his many of special gifts that he had. He just had the energy that was just like he had too much energy in his body, if you can put it into words.
BJ Armstrong joining us here on Tim and Sid. It's interesting. One of the conversations that we were having earlier in the show was we think that this is coming out in part because not enough was said about those years, and that maybe people think that LeBron is testing Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time, and people are being reminded just how good Jordan was. Is there an underrated part of what Michael Jordan brought to the table?
Well, as I was watching those highlights in '86, I was still in college in 1986. I definitely get why this generation, as they should say the player that they've seen, that he is the greatest or whatever. That's what they've seen. Mm-hmm. But when you technically watch that game, those highlights, just from that one game, if you just watch his highlights, okay, he's doing this against Hall of Fame players. He has 49, comes back with 63. That's just not normal. I think Larry Bird summed it up best. We all should have just believed Larry Bird in 1986 when that was it was an amazing quote, right? He was like, that's God disguised as Michael Jordan. And, Larry Bird was an exceptional player. He's arguably in the top, 5 or 10 to ever play the game. When you look at what he was doing, not just athletically, because it was incredible what he was doing, but technically, if you was just watching the footwork and how efficient he was doing these in like one or two dribbles. It wasn't like they weren't aware of him. It was nothing they could do. And these were, Larry Bird, you had Robert Parrish, you had Kevin McHale, you had Bill Walton, you had Dennis Johnson, you had Danny Ainge. It didn't matter. He was just something a little different. And all of us who had a chance to play with him or against him, there's him and then there's everybody else. He was different that way. I can't explain it. I don't want to be disrespectful. If you told me Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the greatest player because he scored 38,000 points, hey, I'm not going to argue that. A man scored 38,000 points with one move, hey, that's phenomenal. If you said Bill Russell because he won 11 championships, great. Will Chamberlain, he scored whatever. You said LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. If you went to the list, whoever, Tim Duncan, great. I'm not going to argue that. But when you put it all together, the business and the basketball, there's nothing. There's no one that's had an impact on the business of sports like Michael Jordan. There's no one. He's redefined it how we look at it, and he's untouchable that way.
Here's the one thing that I saw on my timeline on Twitter from some of the young Bucks that really frustrated me, and I saw someone tweet, the 2019-2020 Knicks would have beaten the 1984 Boston Celtics. Can we like?
Well, no, you just listen. Like I get it. If you're a fan, I get it. I get when I say a fan, if you are just watching the game and you're emotionally invested into the game, and that's great. Listen, Larry Bird, okay, that guy, Larry Legend, I saw a thing or two, right? No, they're not beating. They're not beating him. They're not beating Kevin McHale. That's not even worth bringing up as a discussion, right?
Okay, good.
That's not even an argument. So let's let that argument go, and it belongs in Twitter world, and we'll move on. Larry Bird, no, okay. Like I said, these guys were that good, okay, and that's why I have a hard time saying who's the greatest, because I don't want to disrespect Elgin Baylor. I don't want to disrespect Oscar Robertson. I don't want to disrespect Akeem Olajuwon. I mean, these are wonderful, marvelous players, marvelous in their own right, right? And everyone can make their argument, but this guy Jordan, he's in a different category.
B.J. Armstrong won 3 titles on Michael Jordan teams back in the day. He has been kind enough to join us here on Tim and Sid a day after The Last Dance debuts in the States, and on the same day here in Canada as the first 2 episodes debut on Netflix. B.J., any good story has heroes and villains. It's obvious what Jerry Krause's role will be in this. Are you, I don't know if comfortable is the word, but what did you make of how he was portrayed in the first 2 episodes?
Well, like I said, this is what, look, just in complete transparency, right? I play with Michael, and in one hand we were teammates, but in the other hand we're friends. Jerry Krause drafted me, and I worked for the Bulls for 5 years side by side with Jerry Krause. So, I got a chance to not only see what was heard, what was reported, but I can cut through it. Let me say this about Jerry, right? With the exception of Michael Jordan, Jerry Krause was responsible for everything else, all the other 11 players, and the three-peat. He hired Phil Jackson and the coach, and he didn't do it once. He did it twice.
Right.
Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's good or bad, villain, hero, however you want to slice it. When you play professional sports, that's why they call it professional sports. You understand the business, and you understand the business decisions that have to be made. I get it. I get what it is. Whatever is portrayed, it is betrayed. But no one can argue with what transpired in Chicago. Jerry put together a team and built it around a superior athletic talent. And that's how they did it in the first repeat. Jordan leaves, Jordan comes back, and he does it again. So however you want to take that, you take it. Look, I'm not emotionally invested in what was done, right? I was paid to do a job. I did my job, and I did it to the best of my ability. So I learned very quickly as a young kid who was wide-eyed and happy to be in the NBA that, you know what, yeah, it was my dream to play in the NBA, but the only way that I can stay in the NBA is I got to perform and treat it and understand the business. And I think that's what you saw with Michael Jordan in year 2 when he got hurt. It's always an eye-opening experience for any young player when you go to saying, I do this because I love it, and all of a sudden you realize that it's really a job. So it is what it is. I'm not really however he's portrayed. But no one, it's undeniable that's what he did. He did his job, and if he ruffled feathers, he ruffled feathers. Playing in the NBA, you have to have a certain attitude, right? And my attitude then is whatever. However, you need to get it done, you get it done. Certainly he wasn't there to cuddle or, make friends or whatever, but we all were like that. I was like that. Jordan was like that. Scotty was like that. Phil was like that. You didn't let the results that you were trying to achieve get in the way. And that was the era of the NBA at that time. I mean, it was business. We learned it from the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons learned it from the Boston Celtics, so forth and so on. It was business. It wasn't personal. It was business.
Last one before we let you go, and we're talking to B.J. Armstrong, whose number 10 is retired by the University of Iowa. And I gotta, is there something you're looking forward to in the next 8 episodes, even though you haven't seen them?
Well, I'm really nervous. To be honest with you, I'm really nervous. It's been a long time since I've, I'm really nervous because these characters, right, are like my friends, right? So I watch Bill Winnington, I watch Steve Kerr, I watch, Sam Smith, and all of these, Mike Wilbon. I'm like, these are like my friends, right? These are like people that I speak with frequently. I know these people. I grew up in the business with these people. The thing I'm most looking forward to is for the audience to understand, how this mindset truly developed, right? Michael, when he came into the league, you can see, like, he was a superior talent. With all that talent, he was only still winning 30 games, with all that talent. And I'm really looking forward to what he and what they, I want the documentary to show is the mentality, how it changed and it shifted when he started facing the Detroit Pistons. Because the Pistons presented, a problem for him because his talent couldn't overwhelm the team. As great of an individual talent as he was, he couldn't overwhelm the team with that talent because they had a great team defensively. They were a tough team. They were a tough group. And if there's anything, I think the Detroit Pistons and the way they played, I think that team prepared him and gave him the sense of urgency to not only for him to play well, but for the group to play well. And once Michael Jordan took ownership of the entire team with his talent, the rest is history. And I hope they do a deep dive so you can see how ferocious he really was, right? Because beating the Detroit Pistons was an obstacle all into itself. That was a great team, right? They had a great player. They had the Hall of Fame coach. And they were arguably, just as deep or deeper than we were. And, they had great guys coming off. They had Hall of Famers coming off the bench. Dennis Rodman was coming off the bench, right? And I hope they take a deep dive there because, that was there was no love lost there, right? They didn't like us. We didn't like them. And certainly you're going to see competitive basketball really at its highest. Sometimes I watch those games and, they'll be coming on and you'll see he's like, wow, did I really play in that game? Like the physicality of those games and that series is like someone kind of seriously got hurt, but it was great. I'm glad we all lived to talk about it. And you know what? I hope they really go deep into it because I think people will really enjoy and really see the essence of a true rivalry. I mean, they were a great team, and we wanted what they already had, which was they had championships, and they were the best team in the league at one time.